This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, and faith-focused feature stories with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
A lot of talk about talking. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Webster. President Trump says he's still trying to talk to leaders in Iran about ending the war.
They are negotiating, by the way, and they want to make a deal so badly, but they're afraid to say it because they figure they'll be killed by their own people. They're also afraid they'll be killed by us.
Trump speaking at a Republican fundraiser last night. The U.S. has one peace plan. Iran apparently has quite another.
Iranian state media says the regime will stop the war when it decides to, and when its own conditions are met. Those include an end to, quote, aggression and assassinations, as well as a demand for reparations.
CBS's Holly Williams. As the rhetoric continues, so does the fighting.
IRGC Navy Commander Ali Reza Tangsiri was targeted overnight in a strike in the city of Bandar Abbas, Iran. Tangsiri was directly responsible for commanding the closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
Fox's Trey Yingst in Israel. And this update from the head of U.S. Central Command.
We've now destroyed 92% of the Iranian Navy's largest vessels.
That's Admiral Bradley Cooper. There's also that other war, Russia's 4-year-old invasion of Ukraine, with one big lingering question: does Ukraine have to surrender land to Moscow to bring it to an end?
President Volodymyr Zelensky has told Reuters that American negotiators have placed a big condition on security guarantees proposed as part of peace talks, that Ukraine withdraw from the entire Donbas region. President Zelensky says a Ukrainian withdrawal from Donbas would compromise his country's security and that of Europe.
That's Fox's Jonathan Savage. The Washington Post is reporting today that the Pentagon is considering diverting some resources from Ukraine to the Middle East. Another country no longer making headline news is Venezuela, but its former leader, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife making a court appearance today, hoping to get sprung.
The judge could rule on a motion by Maduro's defense team to throw out the case on the grounds that his Sixth Amendment rights are being violated. Now, they argue that that's happening because the U.S. government is blocking the Venezuelan government from paying Maduro's legal fees.
That's Nate Foy. Well, ironically, social media likely buzzing today about Wednesday's big verdict in L.A. about social media. A young woman awarded millions in damages after accusing social media giants Meta and Google of negligence in designing their platforms to get her hooked early on, leading to depression and suicidal thoughts as an adult. Plaintiff attorney Mark Lanier.
They found that Meta failed to give what a reasonable company should give as warnings.
Julie Scelfo heads the group Mothers Against Media Addiction.
We know that they are no longer invincible. We know that people, ordinary citizens and lawmakers, will no longer stand for them exploiting children for profit.
But, says a company rep,
we will continue to defend ourselves vigorously, as every case is different, and we remain confident in our record.
Kurt Knudsen is known as the cyber guy.
We're going to start to see something very profound for parents. A system, a design of a bunch of screens in front of kids' faces that are designed to engage them. Instead, that engagement priority is going to now shift to safety.
Snapchat and TikTok previously settled with the plaintiff in that L.A. case. Tomorrow was supposed to be payday for roughly 50,000 TSA agents, but once again, they won't see a dime for securing America's air travel system. Day 41 of a congressional DHS funding dispute that still shows no signs of ending. Missouri Republican Josh Hawley.
We've got to find a way to get these people paid. I mean, this is just outrageous. I mean, the average TSA agent makes about $45,000 a year. I mean, these folks, they cannot afford to miss multiple paychecks.
Illinois Democrat Dick Durbin.
We have differences of opinion when it comes to ICE and the standards that they'll live by.
Assuming no paychecks tomorrow, the funding fiasco will amount to about $1 billion in lost wages. A closed runway at New York's LaGuardia Airport expected to reopen today as crews finish removing the wreckage from a fatal collision between a Canadian jet and a Port Authority fire truck.
Crews removed the mangled aircraft from the runway Thursday, removing the fire truck overnight. All but 4 passengers hurt in Sunday's deadly crash between an Air Canada jet and a fire truck have been released from the hospital. all.
That's Fox's Sue Guzman. The International Olympic Committee with a big decision today. They've issued a ban on so-called transgender women from competing in the Games. That IOC decision aligns with an executive order by President Trump ahead of the 2028 Games in Los Angeles. Forecasters keeping a close eye right now on a potential severe weather outbreak. Meteorologist Rob Marciano.
Cold front coming into these record high temperatures across the Corn Belt. So places like Peoria, Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, up through Columbus, Ohio could see an elevated threat of huge hail, damaging winds, and maybe a tornado or two.
Well, that cold front, in fact, is closing in on our area right now. Kevin's forecast is just ahead. Well, back to March Madness tonight. 4 Sweet 16 matchups for the men tonight. Second seed Purdue against 11 seed Texas. Top seeded Arizona against number 4 Arkansas. That's in San Jose. 9th seeded Iowa does battle with 4th seed Nebraska. 2nd seeded Houston meets 3rd seed Illinois. Well, how's your bracket doing? Not as well, I bet, as Pittsburgh's Otto Shellhammer's. He's perfect so far, the only one in ESPN's online tourney challenge to pick all 48 games correct so far. Otto is an 8th grader who says he knows next to nothing about basketball, and he pretty much guessed on every pick. Still to come here on the Noon Report. Some Pennsylvania lawmakers try to redefine marriage. New York's governor making the rounds ahead of a looming budget deadline. And we'll have a brand new edition for you of Faith Under Fire.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. Some rain will be moving into the area where it has not already. Some of us will hear thunder. I'll have forecast details coming up in 10.
All right. Thank you very much, Kevin Williams. Now checking the stories, making news where you live in New York and Pennsylvania. Marriage under fire in Pennsylvania. The State House voting to redefine marriage. It changes the definition from a contract between a man and a woman to a contract between two individuals. Democrat Malcolm Kenyatta.
Marriage is not symbolic. There are legal, there are financial things connected to the institution of marriage.
26 Republicans joined all but one Democrat in voting to redefine marriage in PA. That measure, though, faces an uncertain future in the state Senate. Republican Brian Cutler argues that House bill sets a dangerous precedent.
We need to recognize the foundation of marriage is actually for the stability of children.
While the House did act on the marriage front, it was a no-go for the so-called Fairness Act in Pennsylvania. House Democrats tabling legislation to ban discrimination based on sexual orientation. Republican Josh Kale says there's nothing fair about the Fairness Act.
It's going to create a very unfair circumstance for a lot of different people.
Kale argues it exposes Christian businesses to lawsuits and would allow so-called transgender Pennsylvanians into women's sports and public bathrooms. Now to New York, where Governor Kathy Hochul was in the Buffalo suburb of Cheektowaga Wednesday. It's part of an upstate swing she made, trying to urge state lawmakers to hit the pause button on environmental regulations as a way of paving the way for more affordable housing.
I'm not repealing. I'm just saying, give us a longer runway. And I think that's common sense.
The governor says too many today have been priced out of being able to afford a home of their own.
Do you know the average age now for a first-time home buyer? Not long ago was 30. It is now 40. That is an entire decade where dreams are deferred.
Hochul's housing plan calls for the creation or preservation of 100,000 homes over the next 5 years at a price tag of $25 billion. A proposed amendment to fully repeal New York State's electric school bus mandate was voted down in the state Senate this week. Jamestown Republican George Borrello says it's just not feasible for schools to convert to zero-emission vehicles. Starting next year, all new bus purchases must be electric. A district's entire fleet must be EV by 2035. Chick-fil-A may be on the way to New York's southern tier. Here's Family Life Sarah Harnish.
The popular Christian food chain has submitted a proposal to the town of Big Flats in Chemung County that will be discussed at the next planning board agenda on April 7th. There's no official word on the exact location yet, but right now you'd have to drive to Rochester, Syracuse, or Buffalo to find one. 2 Chick-fil-A restaurants are under construction in Broome County. Sarah Harnish, Family Life News.
Thank you, Sarah. Syracuse University is planning to cut 9 humanities-based majors, all looking to save some money. They include classical civilization, digital humanities, German, Russian, and Middle Eastern studies. Current students will still be able to finish their studies, but new students are not being allowed to enroll. No job cuts, though, are expected. Niagara Falls, New York has a span called the Rainbow Bridge, pretty well known. So does Wyalusing, Pennsylvania. But that Bradford County Rainbow Bridge over the Susquehanna River is closed right now. The sound of PennDOT workers testing that bridge for possible damage after a tractor-trailer carrying an excavator struck the top of the bridge Tuesday night. The 1,400-foot-long bridge, which dates back to the 1940s, carries a two-lane state road over the north branch of the Susquehanna. It was rehabbed back in the 90s. It's unclear how long the bridge might be closed or if repairs will be needed. For now, though, drivers face a 13-mile detour. And a spirit of revival on the University of Pittsburgh campus last night.
That nothing you've done will keep you out of heaven.
The National Unitas Tour stopping in the Steel City last night. Thousands of students turning out for a night of worship, music, and preaching of the gospel. Hundreds then responding to an altar call inside of the Peterson Events Center. The Unitas Tour has seen similar scenes on large campuses across the country. Well, it's time to play ball again. Here's Randy with sports.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Mark, the Yankees are undefeated. Okay, the season just started, but the Bronx Bombers won their first game of the season by dismantling the Giants in San Francisco 7-0. Trent Grisham and Ryan McMahon led the way offensively, driving in a pair of runs. Max Fried, the real star of the show, though, he went 6 1/3 scoreless innings, only allowing 2 hits, and he struck out 4. To hockey. In Buffalo, the Sabres fell in overtime to Boston 4-3. Pavel Zacha scored the game winner for the Bruins in the opening minute of the extra period. Jason Zucker lit the lamp twice for Buffalo. The Rangers also dropped a 4-3 decision, this one to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Mika Zibanejad scored twice for the Blue Shirts, who have now lost 6 straight. On to the NBA. Welcome back, Joel Embiid and Paul George. Embiid finished with 35 points and George added 28. The halftime score was 71-52, and then the 76ers really blew the game open with a 51-point third quarter. You take a 38-point lead heading into the fourth, and that kind of allows the team to cruise, which they did. A 157-137 drubbing of the Chicago Bulls. The Nets lost their 9th in a row, 109-106 to the Warriors. That clinches a play-in spot for Golden State. Other winners, the Hawks, Lakers, Celtics, Heat, Spurs, Wizards, T-Wolves, Nuggets, Blazers, and Clippers. And the men's NCAA tournament resumes tonight with half of the Sweet 16 matchups. Number 2-seeded Purdue faces 11th-seeded Texas. Top-seeded Arizona goes up against number 4 Arkansas. Iowa, a 9-seed, faces number 4 Nebraska. And 2nd-seeded Houston meets 3rd-seeded Illinois. That is a look at sports.
Thank you, Randy. Still to come here on the Noon Report, a recap of some of the day's top stories and a new edition of Faith Under Fire.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Well, this year as America celebrates its 250th anniversary, Breakpoint will examine aspects of the American story through the lens of a Christian worldview. Today, why was slavery established in a country built on such a strong Christian consensus? Thomas Jefferson is rightly called a hypocrite. In the Declaration of Independence, of course, he wrote these famous lines. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yet, Jefferson was among America's founders who owned slaves. From thousands of his writings on the establishment of the United States, it's clear that Jefferson understood his moral breach. He held aspirations that slavery would end, but maintained a different reality. Slavery, he once wrote, is like holding a wolf by the ear. We can neither hold him nor safely let him go. According to the Jefferson Monticello Project, and I quote, he thought that his cherished federal union, the world's first democratic experiment, would be destroyed by slavery. To emancipate slaves on American soil, Jefferson thought, would result in a large-scale race war that would be as brutal and deadly as the slave revolt in Haiti in 1791. But he also believed that to keep slaves in bondage, with part of America in favor of abolition and part of America in favor of perpetuating slavery, could only result in a civil war that would destroy the Union. Now, a helpful framework to understand the gulf that often exists between ideals and practices for a civilization, and certainly in America's founding, comes from the eminent sociologist Patiram Sorokin. Sorokin described 3 types of cultures. Ideational cultures, he thought, see reality in terms of eternal and transcendental ideals, with knowledge coming from revelation or mystical experience and values as absolute and eternal. Sensate cultures, on the other hand, focus on the material world, the here and now. They emphasize values that are situational and relative. Idealistic cultures somewhat combine the two, seeing life as both physical and spiritual, balancing reason with intuition, and with values blending ideals and practical concerns. Jefferson's famous line in the Declaration is certainly ideational. It's an aspiration. It was not yet a reality on the ground in the colonies. On the contrary, the arguments made by pro-slavery factions were most often sensate. What mattered most to them was the protection of immediate economic interest. Not to mention, those who justified slaveholding by appealing to the New Testament argued contrary to over 1,500 years of the Christian doctrine of the image of God. In a moving film called Amistad, John Quincy Adams' character reflected on his nation's struggle with the ideal of freedom. His words in the film were taken from real historical speeches given by the son of John Adams, including this plea to the Founding Fathers, quote, "We desperately need your strength and wisdom to triumph over our fears, our prejudices, ourselves. Give us the courage to do what is right. And if that means civil war, then let it come. And when it does, may it be finally the last battle of the American Revolution." In fact, the Civil War was fought in defense of the ideals articulated in the Declaration of Independence, however hypocritical its author was. Jefferson's words in the Declaration of Independence were aspirational. It was an ideal for a nation to work toward. Though the country certainly had a lot to work out, it aimed it beyond the moment to a better future. All ideals do that, and the very best ideals are those that are anchored in the truth, especially the truth that human beings are created in the image of God. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, now let's check in with meteorologist Kevin Williams.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast for this afternoon. Cloudy, and where it isn't cloudy, it'll soon become cloudy with rain arriving. There'll be a thunderstorm in some areas into the evening hours. Hit miss. Temperatures peaking in the 60s, then tumbling late tonight. The rain ends as a bit of snow or flurries for some. Low temps anywhere from the upper 20s over Niagara to the low 40s in the Poconos. For tomorrow, a much chillier day. A spot of rain or snow early, then clouds break for some sun, with temperatures tomorrow in the 30s and lower 40s.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm Mark Webster. Thanks again for joining us. Here's a quick recap of the day's top stories.
They want to make a deal so badly, but they're afraid to say it.
President Trump, who says despite conflicting reports about negotiations with Iran, there are leaders there who are still talking with us.
There's been a lot of talk about talks over the past 24 hours, even as the bombs continue to drop. CENTCOM releasing more video that they tell us is of strikes against military and regime targets in Tehran and beyond.
That's Fox's Jonathan Hunt. A new move to try to bring down gasoline prices sent sky high by the war, now averaging $3.99 a gallon nationally.
The Trump administration is waiving summer anti-smog rules to allow refineries and retailers to sell gasoline made with 10 and 15% ethanol in May.
That's CBS's Jesse Mitchell. This Dallas DoorDasher tells CBS.
It got to the point where I was like, how much should I actually be doing this at all?
Current average per gallon price in New York is $3.92. It's $3.95 in Pennsylvania. Diesel, even worse, nationally averaging $5.87 a gallon. Farmers are facing an additional war side effect, too, more expensive fertilizer. Michigan farmer Brad Kampreth says it's made a tough situation all the tougher.
Prior to the Iran war, fertilizer was up 30 to 40%. Since the war, it has escalated even more.
Oh, it sure has. Fertilizer prices have jumped from around $240 a ton in 2025 to over $480 a ton now. Well, Uncle Sam still wants you, even if you're 42. The U.S. Army will soon expand the allowable age for new recruits from the current 35 up to 42. Some other restrictions are being loosened as well, such as rules about recruits with certain drug convictions. The minimum enlistment age, though, remains 18 or 17 with parental permission. Those new rules set to take effect for the Army April 20th. 20th. Then there's the battle over DHS funding that's forced TSA workers to do their jobs without pay for weeks.
I hope Democrats will work with us to finalize an agreement.
That's Senate Majority Leader John Thune. New York Democrat Chuck Schumer denies his party's been moving the goalpost in a partisan fight over funding and ICE reforms. In Los Angeles yesterday,
Big Tech, your gig is over. Yep.
2 people celebrating the verdict of an L.A. jury that found Meta and YouTube guilty of making addictive social media platforms. Meta and YouTube's Google both say they will appeal. The case centered on a 20-year-old woman who says she got hooked on Instagram and YouTube before she was 10, contributing to later depression. The companies have been ordered to pay millions in damages. Well, last night's opening of the 2026 Major League Baseball season saw the New York Yankees play Road Warriors with a 7-zip whitewash of San Francisco. It also saw the debut of some new technology into America's grand old game. A robot ump to decide challenged calls.
The system has been tested and refined in the minor leagues since 2022. On average, there have been about 4 challenges a game, each taking around 15 seconds. Players are right about half the time. Catchers are the most accurate.
CBS's Chris Van Cleve. You're listening to The Noon Report on Family Life.
This is Faith Under Fire. We take you straight to the front lines of religious battlegrounds. I'm your host, Sarah Harnish. With me today, plugged in Associate Editor Paul Asay. We're talking ScreenFast 2026. It is a blackout of your screens, cell phones, TVs, tablets, computers, 7 full days without it. Tell me more, Paul.
The ScreenFast really is meant to go for 7 days. If you're looking to give up something to refocus your energy on God, this is a great way to do that. It's also designed where if that doesn't work within your schedule, we actually have it designed where you can take your ScreenFast anytime during the year. We're not really asking people to quit their jobs for this. We're not asking people to stop doing homework for this. Screens are so much a part of our lives that it can be hard to separate from them entirely. But we are asking people to pull back on their social media, to forgo their movies, their television, even looking at Plugged In. We will forgive you for not going to pluggedin.com during the ScreenFast, just so you can reconnect with your friends, with your family, with God in a different way that doesn't involve screens.
This might seem overly simplistic, but you're just talking about take our cell phone, put it in a basket, forget about it for 7 days unless it's needed for work or something that we're doing, like a weightlifting app or something.
Exactly. And that is really what we are encouraging people to do. The screens, we know that they're a huge part of our lives. And I think that most families would say they are too big a part of our families' lives. We just know that we overuse them. Oftentimes, teens, it's the very first thing they look at in the morning. It's the last thing they look at before they go to sleep. And then sometimes they're checking their phones throughout the entire night. And we know that's not healthy. Studies have shown that if you separate yourselves from screens, especially for a week, it allows you to have better focus. It improves your mental health often. It encourages even physical fitness. All of a sudden you have that time to take that walk or go out for a swim or something that you never really felt like you had time to do. Studies have shown that folks who put away their phones for a week, especially when you're talking about teens, for the first few days, it's really, really hard. But by day 7, all of a sudden you realize, wow, I've been wasting a lot of time on my phone. Look at all this stuff that I can dive into. So they begin to think about ways to curtail their screens even when they're allowed to use them again.
Now, this is the annual 7-day ScreenFast, so this is not your first rodeo at Plugged In. Kind of ironic that Plugged In monitors movies and media, and you're the ones telling everybody to shut it all off. So when you're doing this fast, what does it look like for you?
I'll tell you what I'm going to do this year, quite honestly. I'm actually taking vacation because obviously our jobs involve movies, television, all that kind of stuff. This time I'm actually going to take a vacation so that I really can stay away from screens entirely, taking a road trip. And to be honest with you, it's hard for me too. This is right during March Madness. What was I thinking? This is going to be hard for me in a lot of ways because screens are as much a part of my life, if not more so, as a lot of your listeners. So yeah, there's some pain involved, but this is one of those things where you give it up, but you end up getting so much more in return. When I've done it in the past, it really does remind me what's truly important in my life. And it's not necessarily scrolling through TikTok videos.
Why a week? That's a long time.
It is a long time, and we're not going to shame people if they leave it for a day or a weekend. But a week, sort of the inflection point, right, where it is painful. You are giving up something. You feel it. This is not just a day-long fast. This is something that really impacts your life. But because it does impact it, that pain, that sort of visceral pain that we might have when we're talking about this, it reminds us of what God gave up for us. It's just sort of like a Lenten exercise where you give up food or you give up whatever you give up for Lent. It's supposed to have a little bit of pain so you can remember the sacrifices that God made for us. And it also reminds us just how big a part these screens have been in our lives and whether they should be that big of a part overall.
Talk to me about nitty-gritty for a moment here. Obviously, if somebody's job involves a computer or kids are using a laptop at school, they're going to have to continue with those behaviors. What about for those of us that just have an obsession checking weather 6 times a day?
Yeah, that's really the issue, right? Again, we're not forcing people to give up work or school or anything like that, but we are encouraging you to step away from it. And I do think something that you mentioned earlier, I think is really good advice. Put away the phone. For centuries, people did not have these little bricks in our pockets, and we survived just fine. If we can set that aside so it's not a temptation, so the first thing when we're bored, we're not reaching for our phone to scroll through or check social media, I think that takes a lot of the temptation out of it. And encourage yourself to do fun things to fill that time. Lean into some of the creative activities that you've never had time to do before. Cook, write, paint, take a hike. All these things, when you're taking away the screens that fill up so many hours of our lives, fill that with something else. Fill that with something that I might say might even be a better fit.
Where can families sign up?
You can go to PluggedIn.com. If you look at our homepage, you'll see a little thing that actually talks a little bit about just taking time away from it. It says, stop the screen invasion, do a family screen fast, and it's right below our main movie. But if you wanted to go directly to the sign-up page, go to PluggedIn.com/ScreenFast2026. Then you'll get a 7-day resource. We call it a survival guide to help suggest some ideas to fill those extra hours with something that might be kind of fun for you and your family.
What have you seen out of this fast, and why does it matter?
We have seen a lot of growth. When people have done this in the past, they have reported that it's been an incredible catalyst for family growth. They've been able to spend more time together. They've been able to enjoy one another a little bit more when they're not always distracted by their screens. And that's why it's really important. When I think about the screen fast, I don't think about it as taking away something. I really think of it in terms of getting something. We return to what's important to us. We return to our relationships with our family, with our friends, with God. When I was a kid, our power used to go off. I lived in a really tiny town. Our power would go off every once in a while, and it'd be off for an evening or a day. Looking back, those were my favorite times as a child. You know why? Because it allowed me to spend really significant time with my mom and dad. Sometimes the hustle and bustle, even back then, of just watching TV, of having so much to do, it takes away from those relationships. But when the power was out, when we lit the candles, when we were able to talk, when we were able to play games by that candlelight, those are the precious moments, the precious memories that I hold most dear. And the screen fast allows us to lean into that without ever lighting a candle.
Learn more at PluggedIn.com.
Thank you, Sarah. Faith Under Fire airs Thursdays during the Noon Report or online anytime at Apple Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, and FamilyLife.org. Just ahead, a Pennsylvania reunion, more than a decade in the making. First, Weather with Kevin.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. We're tracking a cold front that'll be crossing the area over the next 12 hours, bringing with it prospects for rain, thunder, much colder air, and even a little bit of snow for some. Here are the forecast details for this afternoon. Cloudy, and where it isn't cloudy, it'll soon become cloudy with rain arriving. There'll be a thunderstorm in some areas into the evening hours. Hit and miss. Temperatures peaking in the 60s, then tumbling late tonight. That rain ends as a bit of snow or flurries for some. Low temps anywhere from the upper 20s over Niagara to the low 40s in the Poconos. For tomorrow, a much chillier day. A spot of rain or snow early, then clouds break for some sun, with temperatures tomorrow in the 30s and lower 40s. Brisk and cold Saturday, sun, clouds, and flurries. High temps 30s and low 40s.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin. Finally at noon, it was 2015 when Jordan Koviak, then a Philadelphia teenager, had 2 dogs stolen from her backyard. One was recovered pretty quickly. The other, though, named 40, never came home. But Jordan, who later moved to Luzerne County, PA, tells WNEP she never gave up on 40.
It was a long time of heartache. I never gave up on him, like ever. I was so relentless.
Then, this month, more than a decade later, she got a phone call from Philly Animal Control. 40 had been found.
I cried. All I did was cry. I didn't go to bed that night. A little girl found him on the street. He walked up to her.
Making the reunion even more touching, Jordan and 40 were reunited just a few days short of her dad's birthday. He passed away the same month 40 was stolen, and it was her dad who gave her a love of animals.
That was his big thing. He used to bring animals. Like, I would get animals for my birthday, for Christmas. He loved animals, and it's just so funny that he came back to me on my dad's birthday of all times. It's like at his age, God was like, you're ready for him, and he's ready for you.
Well, one thing's for certain, 40, who's now 14, was more than ready to see Jordan again. And that's the world we live in for Thursday, March 26th, 2026. As always, thanks for listening. I'm Mark Webster, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.